Graphic design? Can you make a living at that?
Three, two, one, fun, 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 fun.
Welcome to Design Futures, a show about what happens after design school. I'm Chris St. Cyr, and my guest on this episode is Jared Schafer. It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Look like Michael J. Fox over there, all suave.
Jared is a director of motion graphics at Upside Collective, where he works on projects for clients such as Saratoga Race Course, LG Solar, St. Mary's College, Quest Diagnostic, and the list goes on. His award-winning work has appeared in Print Magazine, Science Translational Medicine, and Science Immunology, as well as the textbooks Immersive 3D Experiences and Powered by Design. Additionally, he has been an adjunct professor at the Sage Colleges and served as the Director of Communications for AIGA Upstate. He is a 2014 graduate of the Sage Colleges. You've been busy.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You got bullet points on your resume. You got stuff going on. Oh man, we just ran into each other a few weeks ago. Of course, when this episode airs, it'll be months or whatever, but you were just talking about showing some work at Art on Lark and a little bit of that history there.
Yeah, the first Art on Lark we did was in 2014. No, not 2014, probably 2012 or 2013, when we were trying to raise money for Sage to go to Minneapolis for the AIGA conference. So a bunch of the AIGA students like me and Crystal and Jason Carnegie and like 3 or 4 other people went in on a tent, which at the time was like $100. We'll print out some of our like personal projects, maybe some Sage projects, see if we can raise some money for that trip. And I worked at the bar on Lark Street, Cafe Hollywood, and our tent was right in front of it. So, I mean, I was old enough to drink. So I was just pounding beers and selling art. And it was like the most fun day ever. Like I had never sold artwork before, and I was hooked. And I've done it every year since, just on my own. Yeah. When I saw you, the weather was perfect, and I think everybody had an itch to get out. It was the beginning of summer, and it was like 3 times busier than usual. And I made 3 times more than I usually do. It was awesome. And then my son was there, and I had paper bags to put people's, prints in. And he started drawing on the bags, and then he would get tipped by people because he had drawn his own little pictures on the bag. So it was cool. He had a blast. When it was over, he was like, I don't want to go home. He doesn't say that about anything.
That's the best day. I don't want to go home. So one of the things that, I was really curious about and just watching your career unfold is all the motion graphics stuff, the motion design stuff. You're director of motion design. Can you just talk a little bit about like what you do at Upside Collective as a motion designer, a motion director? Like what does that entail?
For the most part, I've been kind of a lone wolf. Like when it comes to like motion, like I pretty much do everything that has to do with motion at Upside Collective, which isn't like an entirely like giant piece of like the work that's output. Like our biggest client is the state of New York, and a lot of print and layout is what Upside does. And also video. But video entails almost 99% of the time some sort of motion graphics. I mean, even the most basic talking head videos, you're going to have titles, you're going to have color correction, you're going to have, et cetera. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
But when you have like a motion graphics project, you're doing the majority of it, or are you work with like a creative director that comes up with some concept, or how does that that kind of
I'm pretty much doing everything. Sometimes there's a creative director involved, like if like the motion piece is part of a grander project, like if there's some branding or illustration or whatever else is involved, or like the brand's already been established, I'll get directed like, hey Jared, we need you to make this. But otherwise it's like, this is the project, Jared, what do you think we should do? With some of like kind of like the drier stuff, like for instance, let's just say Quest Diagnostics, they'll have a script that's put together that has to be approved by legal, and they are very specific in what they can show in the videos when it's like their lab coats and like what's in the background. If there's prescription labels on the vials, like those have to like make sure they're either, if they're in the video, they're blurred out or whatever. So all that's like really fine tuned, and I'll get a general description like, hey, we're going to be shooting at this lab, but we want to make it cooler than that. What do you think we should do? And then I'm like, oh, maybe we can whatever, and then I'll work on that. But like, because they're so like strict on what they can show and do, like they'll have like a script written by their people,
Right.
And then I can just go off of that.
Can you describe your setup? Because I talked to Jordan Glendon, who and does some similar kind of work, and he was describing like his setup. And I know that just as soon as you start saying 3D, that just increases the amount of memory and the space and all the monitors and all the stuff you have. Can you describe like what kind of setup you have to do these 3D animations?
Sure. I have a 6-foot standing desk. It goes up and down, so I can do either. With a 49-inch curved monitor. That's my main, like the one I'm looking at right now is like my main work monitor. And then off to my side here, I got a 24-inch Cintiq monitor, and then another widescreen monitor. And then for my actual setup, my actual computer, I have a beefy computer. I just got it like a year or so ago. It's water cooled. It's got 4 GPUs in it because I use a GPU renderer. Without getting too like nerded out, there's
yeah.
Usually use the CPU like to render, but in the last like 5 or 6 years, GPU rendering has been a big game changer. So the more GPUs you have, the faster it'll crank out. So I got 4 GPUs. Most computers have 1. Almost 99% of computers have 1 GPU. Because of the 4, it gets so hot, you need like water cooling. So there's literally water pipes going through my GPUs, blast hot air out the top.
That sounds super sci-fi. Like
it's crazy.
Every time
you want to see it? Hold on, here we go.
A movie with like water cooling computers, it just seems so futuristic. That is, wow. So what's like your average kind of render? Are you? You're doing a lot of like kind of marketing, advertising kind of work, so it's pretty short bits. Like what's kind of a common, like 30 seconds? Is that pretty standard or?
No, that'd be long. That'd be long. As far as like advertising, like animations go, like that would be long. Do a lot of logo animation. I've done a few full length product animations. I also have been recently doing VR development for a cleaning company, training their employees on the company and like some of the products they sell, basically building this whole like facility in VR where they go in and learn about these products and then go into this theater and they can watch videos that have already been shot, like normal videos, but like in a theater. It's crazy. Yeah. It's cool.
Let's take a look. I'm going to bring up the work so you can talk about some of it. The Bishop, you were talking about this. This is actually somebody you're friends with, or you have. So
when I worked at Cafe Hollywood on Lark Street for 7 years, and some of my best friends I worked with after I went to school and started a career, they stayed at Cafe Hollywood for a few years, but then they opened up their own place, the Bishop in downtown Albany on Pearl Street. And being that I do what I do, they're like, you got to do our logo and our branding and everything. I actually named the place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Funny story. Basically, all the consonants in the name are the first and last name of the original 4 owners. So BS, H, and P were the 4 guys, and I just figured that they could make the Bishop. I was like, that's a cool word, like using all of your last names. And then one of the original 4 dropped out at the last minute. I'm like, oh, it doesn't work anymore, but it was too late. So they stuck with it. Yeah. So they wanted something like kind of elegant, but like that could also be like on the back of like a leather jacket at the same time. And this is like, I went through a couple iterations of stuff and finally found, settled on this, and they liked this a lot. But it was a pain getting there, doing work for your friends and something, something like that was huge for, at the time. It's like, man, they're opening their own place. This is a big deal. And like, you put all this pressure on you to like, satisfy everyone. And the first round didn't go well. And then, by the grace of God, something worked out.
Yeah, it looks cool. I do like the animation here on this page with the it's kind of animating the logo and kind of all the environment, all these kind of graphics that resemble like buildings and architecture and maybe Albany.
Yeah, thank you. One of the biggest hurdles was they wanted the bishop, like the chess piece, as like the eye or as something in the word for their logo. And every time, no matter what I did, it always looked too phallic. I'm like, this looks like a dick in the middle of this word. And like, no matter what I did, I couldn't get that out. I was like, can we not do the bishop piece in the logo, please, for the love of God? It looks like a dick no matter what I do. And they're like, yeah, we got you. We got you. They use it in some other things, I think like the men's room, like in the bathroom signs. I don't know. They used it like tastefully in the right places.
And then in this one, so Craftware is hey, there you are in the video. Is Craftware is clothing or it's drinks or both, or what? It was beverages?
It's no longer a company. My boss started it with his buddies, basically to make like beer related clothing, like t-shirts and stuff.
Okay.
That they would sell at like, beer festivals and like, the certain venues.
Right.
And just try and, cheeky stuff. So we just like would crank out all these t-shirt designs, and we had like a hot press and do vinyl, shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And started a website, and I did some coaster illustrations, which you see now, based on the different locations. Like one of his buddies was like a beer distributor in certain markets. So like, if you look right there, like Northern California, Chicago, Florida, were like some of the big markets that his distributor buddy like worked through.
I gotcha. Yeah.
So those are specific places he wanted us to like focus on. So yeah, that was fun. Like those were some great like downtime projects. Like a bunch of designers at the time were able to work on.
And which part did you do? Did you do the animation here?
I did. Though I did those illustrations, and then if you scroll a little bit further down underneath that, like I did a poster. So stuff like that.
Yeah, cool.
It's more like a lifestyle experience type thing. I mean, some of them were just like straight up like, what would a beer drinker think is funny?
Right.
That would buy. Like one of the ones, you don't see it here, it was funny. It was like this shitty drawing of Tom Cruise, and it said, I have the need for mead. That was the fucking, that was it. like so like lowbrow and but it's dumb, but it's hilarious. And it's like, yeah, there's definitely like 20 dudes that would buy this at a beer festival, 100%. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like that one, I don't know if you could see it, but it was like, that was one of my like more cheeky ones where it shows like a rock, and then like that one right there, the finger, and it's like craft beer and then fucking rocks. Like, but it was really small print, so you had to get close. People love that shirt, especially at Larkfest.
Yeah, I can imagine at the right event.
Exactly.
With the right audience.
That's the thing. You got to know your audience, right?
Yeah.
Like,
let's take a look at this last one. This one you sent me, this kind of a reel of, it says medical and micro environment. So what are these? Are these like tests, or are these from
okay. So
projects?
There's a little bit of background to this. So Quest Diagnostics is one of our clients, and they use us. When they use us, usually it's for like talking heads, like doctors talking about like cancer testing and oncology and stuff like that. And they're, that's what they do, but they're such a huge company, and they have all kinds of cool like 3D medical animations and stuff that they obviously use other companies for. And we're like, well, why can't we do some of this stuff? Right. So we put together this reel specifically to like kind of like, hey, I know we do this other stuff for you, but we can do this too. So my job, I spent like 2 weeks like making these scenes like they were part of other projects we worked on, but they're just completely just, I just made up stuff like they were different projects. But what sparked this is my sister is a cancer researcher. She just got her PhD, and she asked me to do an illustration. That right there, that Science Translational, that was an actual cover for Science Translational Medicine. It's not print, it's digital only. But her research got published in Science Translational Medicine. And she's like, can you do the cover? And like, we went back and forth. We're not guaranteed to get the cover. There's other people that are going to be involved. But if we do, it'd be cool. So we ended up getting the cover. So when Brendan, my boss, found that out, I'm like, oh, that's legit. We can use this to like maybe try and get Quest to give us some, 3D medical stuff.
Right.
So that was the whole like thing.
I remember you posting some of these little pieces of things, these studies that you were doing, and I see some of it in here. One of these, it's like this one here. Your comment posted something about particles. What's the phrase in motion graphics? Like, is it just particle effects or?
Yeah, well, I used a software called X Particles to make this.
Okay.
So a lot of fluid things like fire, smoke, water are all particle simulations, and just how big and how many of them and how they move is what, and then what you like make the texture of them, create those different elements.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I was just learning how to use X Particles. One of the things that like nuggets of like my experience, like wisdom, if you would say, that I would love to pass on to people that are trying to learn new techniques through tutorials, is instead of just following what the tutorial like is telling you to do, is to an extent follow it, but change it and make it your own. So
Yeah.
I was learning how to like build some sort of thing with particles. And I just kind of like, once I started learning what they were, some of the principles and techniques, I just started going my own way with it. And I would love more people to do that. Like, make it your own. I feel like you're gonna learn so much more, and you'll actually grasp why things are the way they are. Like knowing why you're pushing certain buttons instead of just pushing them because they told you to. Like that, like being more of a proactive like learner in that. And that's how I really got better.
So this other one that you'd mentioned was picnic brunch.
Yeah, picnic brunch. Yep. Paul Engel, who also works at Upside, he did the branding for this alcoholic like canned cocktail. It's got mimosas, Bloody Marys, Bellinis, and yeah, actually that's it for now. There was another one I'm not allowed to talk about yet. Sorry. It's released yet. But yeah, he did the branding, I think, on his own before he got hired at Upside. And then when he started working at Upside, he's like, so I did this branding for this company. They'd love for us to do like these travel posters for ads. And so he did some travel posters, and some other designers did some travel posters. And then we had some downtime, and my boss was like, can you like do some animations of the posters? And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, do an animated poster? like for what? He's like, I don't know, just do it. Like, I don't know.
Just do
So
it.
I started like as this random like idea of his doing animated, posters just for social media. Like, so they would do like an actual travel poster, and then I would take those elements and turn them into a 3D animation. It ended up being so fun. Like this one that we're watching now, like ended up being like one of my favorites.
There's a lot of different elements, objects, environments in that work. What do you find the most challenging kind of objects to create or render or animate when you're in this like 3D kind of environment?
Some of the simulation stuff is so like computer intensive. Like to get something to look right, it takes so much like back and forth and like waiting and then when you do get it to look right, you got to incorporate it now with everything else. That's a huge challenge. making things, complicated things move in general, like trees blowing in the wind. Doing one tree is fine, but like you want it all to be in a just bigger environment and having it look nice. Like that's obviously very taxing. Some of those things, and then like once you get all that working, now you got to get like the lighting and the camera moves right. So there's this tricky balance of knowing exact, kind of like you kind of have to know exactly what you want it to look like before you start building it, so that you can plan out, okay, plan out the camera move first using blocks as trees for now, just so you can get that movement right. And then, you know, maybe the lighting before you start bringing in like the render intensive objects, trees, buildings, cars, whatever. So there's this tricky balance. So once you realize you got to like plan out, like it's like sketching before you start really dialing the details in a drawing, but like in 3D, like where you have movement and lighting and camera moves, like all those kinds of things.
The other thing I wanted to ask you that sort of comes from students, like I've asked students in the past, like, you know, what would you ask like designers? And this is one of those questions that I feel like students ask a lot of is, so how did you decide on this kind of animation motion design as a focus in your design career? Like you've said, you do other things, but you know, you got the computer, you got the hardware to prove it, right? Like you got the real. So like when did you make that decision? Was that in school? Was that right when you left school as an intern? Like, was there something that clicked for you at some point? Said
there was a specific moment, actually. Yeah. I don't know if it was my love for video games or movies or special, whatever it is. I remember specifically though, at Sage, I was taking digital animation, and Matt McElligott was my professor. And it was the first time we ever opened After Effects. And he was explaining, Matt's really good at explaining why things are the way they are. And that's what one of my favorite characteristics about Matt was, like, he would tell you why things work the way they do, almost to an exhaustion. But one of the things he said, he's like, the power of After Effects was basically nested compositions, and the fact that it could take any file, and he demonstrated it. So it was like, I think just like a square, right? Yeah. He's like, all right, so we got a square here. And then he made this square spin or rotate, I mean, and then he's like, all right, so we got a rotating square. You're like, oh, fucking cool, whatever. And then he brought
do a circle next.
Yeah, and then he brought in like he made another square spin, right, on its own. He started a new composition, and then he put the two compositions together, and then he made that composition spin. So you got a spinning composition of two spinning squares. Yeah. Then he brought a light in, and the light cast the shadow from one square onto the other. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, that is amazing. Like, you know, like I was like, and it seemed so simple, but it looked amazing. And like, it was like a few clicks, and like, there's something casting a shadow on another thing just like that. And I was like, wow. And I immediately started thinking of the things of like, because I don't know, like, until you're like shown certain things, like, I don't know, like I figured like somebody had to draw the shadow going across the square. I didn't know you could just have a light and then like it does that for you. Like I was like, what? Yeah. I was like, oh man, I think I'm gonna like this. And we start, like, the movie title sequence was such a fun project for me. And I got a lot of like kudos and recognition for my movie title project. And that just fueled it. Like, yeah. But I love everything. I love all aspects of graphic design except for web design. Fuck, I hate web design.
Somebody else does.
I don't like when shit you make changes. Like, I fucking hate that. Like,
you mean when the browser changes
size? Like, oh, I gotta make it for 100 different screen sizes. Like, because I get mad when like I get something perfect and then like it switches to something else. I'm like, oh my god, I don't want it to look like that.
That's great that you had that initial experience. So that's where we met at Sage, in the classroom. I can't even remember what courses there were at that point, but
you were my type 2 guy.
The type class, probably. Yeah.
I remember specifically in memory was we were on you remember the rickety like sideways stairs the old Sage building.
Oh yeah, yeah. The small one looks like a house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were on the top floor coming out of something. And I had this, you were standing next to me and I was like, Chris, dude, I went to bed loving this design. I was super stoked. Like I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about my design and I woke up and I fucking hated it. And you were like, welcome to this, to art school or whatever the fuck you said. And I was like, oh, well,
That's
it was like
so-
comforting and like infuriating at the same time. It was like, I was like, oh, I'm not alone. But it was also like, oh.
What was your experience at Sage like? Because I noticed on LinkedIn, I think I remember this from school. You went to another school before Sage?
If you want to really rewind, I went to UNC Greensboro back in 1998 when I was an actual, 18-year-old out of high school. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I ended up in the service industry and then bartending. Fast forward, I'm in New York and now in my 30s and I've met the love of my life. I'm like, I gotta get out of this. I'm, just chain smoking, bartending, fucking playing video games, playing guitar. That was my life. Like
That's fine for a few years, but
yeah. And then like I knew I needed to start, going somewhere more positive. And Hudson Valley, HVCC, had this day, like, we don't give a shit what you've done in your past. If you show up on this day, you're in. I'm like, oh, fucking, we're in on this day.
Right.
So I was like, I want to try architecture. Like I was like, I convinced myself that's what I wanted to do. Like, so I went on where you're in no matter what day at HPCC, even though I dropped the shit out of UNCG. Like I lit a match when I left there, like didn't like leave my classes properly. So I had like all kinds of like incompletes and whatever. So I'm like, I hope, like, I don't know if they'd take me if I didn't go on this day. So I did, but it was spring and they were like, sorry, you can't do architecture. You have to start in fall. But I had graphic design in my back pocket. So I was like, what about graphic design? And it was like a 1-year program. I was like, I can do that. Like I gotta try that.
Right.
So like, yeah, you do graphic design. I'm like, let's fucking do it. So I remember being in my very first class in graphic design. We opened up InDesign. I fucking hated it. I hated it. Like my biggest thing, and I remember this very specifically, was the difference between the black and the white arrow, right? Every time every time I wanted to move the fucking photo on my thing, I would move it inside the box and it would disappear. And I had to try and find out how to get it back out of I was like, oh, this is so dumb. I hate it. And clearly other kids had taken graphic design in high school. I'm like this old dude who just felt like just out of place. But that went away. That went away within like a week or two. And I'm like, all right. Because we're putting stuff on the board and my shit looks so jank. like so bad. And I've seen some of these kids like taking like the number 8 and making these cool spirals that go off in the distance. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, this is like day 2. How are you doing that already? Like, this is not fair. But yeah, I stuck with it, man. And like, Matt and Sean came to Hudson Valley and pitched Sage, like in some random like info session. But I got in, to Sage, and the rest is history.
For those of you at home keeping score with your technology, the black arrow is selection and the white arrow is direct selection. All right. Class dismissed. So how many years were you at Sage? 3?
Yeah.
3 years. I mean, it was pretty clear when I had you as a student. It's like, oh, you're definitely older, more mature. You kind of like, you got, in some ways, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. You sort of like had enough of that maturity to know, like, you were taking it seriously. Maybe you experienced when you were 18, you're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and like a lot of 18-year-olds, they don't know what they're doing in college and you're just wasting time. You might as well just do something else for a while.
Makes all the difference in the world. I envy people that leave high school knowing what they want to do. Good for them. Like I got like, a lot of time to make up for, I grew up so fast at Sage, man. You don't understand. Like I went from, drinking, smoking, playing video games, playing guitar, to getting married, buying a house while I was a student at Sage, having
Oh,
a
really?
career, and then within a few years later having kids. Like it's crazy. My life changed between 2012 and like 2015.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
crazy.
Happens quickly,
Oh
right?
man. Yeah, quit smoking, got mad at you in an
That's
email.
good.
I couldn't score an A in your class and it was driving me nuts. Oh, lack of
And now
sleep
who
because
cares?
I
Who
work
cares?
till 5 a.m. on the weekends at bartending. And then the rest of the time I spent in the lab. And then, my wife now, girlfriend at the time, was on my ass about quitting smoking, and like,
Yeah.
so lack of sleep. You felt the brunt of some of my poorer decisions, and I
Oh, my
apologize
God.
for that.
So when you were 18 or younger, did you do art classes in high school or anything creative like that sort of made you think like, oh yeah, architecture or documentary films or anything like that when you were a kid?
Yeah, very checkered past with art, but I was a military brat. So I was born in North Carolina, and then I moved to Arkansas, California, and then Spain, all before I was like 10 years old. And my dad was Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. He didn't allow us to watch TV. So me and my brother, who's a year apart, a year younger than me, we would draw. We were obsessed with comics. We would go to the used bookstore, Ed McKay's used books, I remember, and we would just get piles of comics, and they were like 10 cents each. And then we would like compete against each other. We would draw all day, copying comics, like just like we love Spawn, we love Iron Man.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like we because of our competition, we got really good, and because of lack of TV and just moving around a lot.
Yeah.
So he ended up being a very, very good like portraiture artist. Like even though he's in the army and he's huge, like badass like dude, like his illustration, like he can draw like a photograph. Like
Mhm.
so he would like, it's sad, but like he would lose like, some of his fellow soldiers and friends, and he would draw the portraits for like their families.
Oh, yeah.
So he's maintained his illustration skill. I kind of got out of that right around high school. I started getting into music big time,
Mhm.
and I played guitar and drums, and we had a whole like studio in our basement. And I kind of went that route. Hair was down past my shoulders. Then I get into like these hardcore bands in high school, like
Yeah.
North Carolina NCHC, North Carolina hardcore. Then I started like getting into tattoos, and I apprenticed to be a tattoo artist for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So I went that. So it was like drawing, music, tattooing. I never ended up actually being a tattoo artist. But I mean, it was like it's kind of like riding a bike. Once I started getting into graphic design, started figuring out the software, it started, I felt like that having that background definitely helped.
For sure. Yeah, I think that the no TV helps, the no screens.
And then, what the other side of that is like you had to seek out that like quality art. Like we had to like beg our mom to go to the used bookstore so we get more comics. Having the phone in this, you can see the most beautiful artwork like instantly. And I feel like that's detrimental in a different way. Like where if you're trying to be good at whatever and seeing this, immaculate art on Instagram, like from all these, anywhere in the world, you're seeing the best, and having that Instagram, you start comparing yourself immensely to that. And if you can't draw or whatever like that right away, you end up quitting.
Yeah.
Like Ira Glass has a thing where he talks about the gap where your taste and your
yeah.
skills, there's a gap, and you have to match, you have to bridge that gap by just doing lots of work. But I feel like it's even worse now. Like
Yeah.
people quit so quickly when they're comparing themselves to these artists that have had 30 years of experience posting on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they don't take that into account. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like I can learn anything I want, and like
Yeah.
watching process videos just like that. So there's like a double-edged sword. It's like
Yeah.
you still got to work hard, but you can learn anything. You can learn
Yeah.
anything. You just got to put in the time.
Do you think there's anything missing, not necessarily from your education, but are there things that you think about when you're on the job? You're like, oh man, why doesn't that person know this? Or why don't I know this? Why didn't my teachers or why didn't the curriculum have this? Are there things that you think is missing in design education?
There's a couple of things that I feel like I should have been better at. And it's mainly like pre-pro stuff. Like, I don't feel like at Sage, because I'm only speaking from my experience. I don't know how other schools do it, you know. We weren't drilled into the planning and sketching phase enough. I felt like we were given a project, and I'm guilty of this too. And we would immediately go do a little bit of research and then just jump into the software instead of sketching out ideas, whether it's literally sketches or like putting a mood board together, like, and then like having a solid idea before you start and like working out some of those problems you're inevitably going to run into when you just jump into the software. I feel like I could have been drilled in a little bit more.
What else you got there on your notes? Other things you need to get off your chest? This is your time.
One of the questions you said was about how do you take care of yourself working from home or just in general.
Yeah, you just like
And
rocking out in your basement with your guitar now to like sort of release the tension, or what do you do?
Not enough, I'll tell you that. Not enough. I'm in terrible
I hear
shape.
that.
Terrible shape.
Yeah.
So I got a one wheel last summer, right before it started getting cold. Yeah. So I've been riding that. Not like the best exercise per se. But it does make your legs tired. It's fun as shit though.
It has like a big fat tire. Can you go like on like dirt paths and stuff?
Yep.
You don't have to be on concrete, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun.
All right, let's move on to the pop quiz. First question for Jared is favorite animated movie.
Wall-E and Spider-Verse. They're tied.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah. Work beverage.
Zoa energy
What's
drink.
Zoa?
It's the Rock's new energy drink that's supposedly healthy.
After work beverage.
IPA.
You were talking about pre-planning and sketching earlier. So sketchbook, blank or gridded?
Usually blank.
Okay, Mr. Motion guy, ease in or ease out?
Easy ease, baby.
Easy ease. I did hear a story years ago about you were like telling some student at a portfolio review, it's like, you got to work on that easy ease. That's looking not good. Yeah, to somebody.
Oh, dude, it's like the biggest. It's a game changer.
It makes all the difference in the world. Just
it really does.
Just hit that one thing. Like if you do that, you've done a lot.
Highlight those keyframes, hit F9. That's literally all you got to do. Oh man.
I don't know. You're working with a lot of audio. Do you listen to music while you're working?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What do you listen to?
Film scores, almost 90% of the time. If I need a little more energy, I've been listening to synthwave.
Oh yeah, sure. I think this one's crucial for everybody, but maybe particularly for somebody who works with the file sizes you work on. So how do you back up your files?
Oh, I got my work stuff backed up on OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive, and then I got my personal stuff. I have a Dropbox account. And I also have an external 18 terabyte hard drive.
Okay, the last question. If you weren't a designer, what would you be?
Not an architect.
Lead guitarist for a band.
Oh, that was my dream. That is ship has sailed. I want to say I'd be an illustrator.
That sounds good. That's related. All right. What final thoughts do you have for students?
Oh, like the tutorial thing. Like make it your own. Like don't stop learning. When you do learn, be active about it and make it your own. Make it so you'll learn more out of it. Have personal projects, outside of work. To keep you motivated. You got to. Yeah.
You're a good example of that. Like you always seem to be working on something that's interesting to you, and then somehow it works its way into a client project later on. So definitely you all should look at Jared's work, especially if you're interested in 3D animation. I mean, this stuff just blows me away. Every time I see something, I'm like, I have no idea how they do that. That's pretty amazing stuff. So it's always cool to see what you're posting.
Thanks, man.
Hey, it was great catching up with you. I learned so much about you tonight. We caught up. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. It was great talking. We'll catch up sometime in the future as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, man.
effects produced by holes.
それはどこですか?
Energetic effects produce energetic effects produce energetic effects.
So, what do we learn from Jared? Number one, when you're learning from one of those tutorials, don't just follow the directions. Make something new, make something that's your own. Number two, sketch your ideas first before jumping on the computer. Thanks to Jared Schafer of Upside Collective. If you have any comments or questions for me or any of the guests, please leave them in the comments. And subscribe so you can catch the next episode of Design Futures. Until next time, go learn something. Your future depends on it. Thanks for listening. See ya.